Hey guys, I hope you are enjoying the sessions at Kiosk Carnival so far. So we have yet another session on an amazing topic, which is about creating a learning culture by Amir Shaked. So Amir is a senior VP of research and development at Perimeter X. He's responsible for building a multi-zone distributed system that detects and mitigates automated attacks on websites in real time. Before that, he used to lead several software engineering groups in the Israeli Ministry of Prime Minister, focusing on cybersecurity products, and worked many years as a software engineer and a security researcher. So in this talk, he's going to talk about how to create a learning culture. And without any further ado, I would love to see the talk. So let's give it to him.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for a session of how we created a learning culture using debriefs. I'm excited to share with you our journey here at Chaos Carnival. My name is Amir Shaked. I lead the research and engineering team at Perimeter X, and I'm an experienced breaker of production environments. Perimeter X, we are a software as a service company. Providing solutions to protect modern web apps at scale. Behind the scenes, we have a cloud-based microservices environment on a large scale, about 300 microservices running over fully Dockerized on about 15,000 cores. And like many other production environments, we too see fails all the time. Today, we're going to cover our journey going through the process of change towards creating a healthy and supportive learning culture by taking those failures and building on those. This is the essence of skills engineering, as I see it. While a lot can be said on the technical aspects of randomly breaking things to find gaps, reality can always surprise you. And every production system I worked on experienced issues, sometimes due to code changes, other times due to third-party providers having their entire infrastructure crashing, leading us to seek ways to learn and improve constantly on how we do things, how we protect the system, and at the end of it, how do we provide the best service to our customers. When I joined the company, I've set a destination of wishing to see rapid deployment and rapid changes, being able to provide the most adequate and up-to-date solution. In our case, a world of moving target defense, where the scope of features changes all the time due to threat actors, being able to deploy changes quickly is a major factor in our ability to provide a competitive product. In fact, oftentimes, a good DevOps culture can be the differentiator and act as a competitive edge for your company. We wanted to have zero downtime, and having errors or mistakes happen only once, so we will have a chance to learn from them, but never twice, meaning that we haven't. However, the starting point wasn't that bright. We saw repeating issues, be it minor things in causing failures in production due to code changes or configuration changes, and being too prone to incidents in their underlying cloud environment affecting our stability. Those two factors were very concerning when we looked at how we are going to grow and scale, looking 10x ahead, looking 100x ahead. And what may be a minor risk today will likely be catastrophic in the future, and that future can happen really soon. It can happen next week if, for example, if you're in a fast-growing company and completely unexpected. While those were concerning, the last one listed here really prevented us from improving and taking learning actions, and that was the fear of judgment. Whenever we trying to dive into a certain issue, we had pushbacks. Why do we ask so many questions? Why do we not trust the people to do their job? They know what they should be doing. Why don't we just let them do their work? And that's a problem. If you have a team members afraid or feeling that they're being judged or generally insecure in their work environment, they're going to underperform. And as a team, you will not be able to learn and adapt and improve upon. Well, in essence, this is the whole point of this exercise of how do we create learning culture and adapting. So how do you incorporate between those two? So with that starting point and the destination in mind, we set off for to set a new process for the team. A new process for the team. What do we do? How do we analyze every kind of failures? What do we do during the analysis? How do we conduct debriefing and the follow-up? And why focus on the process in the first place? Well, since, like the great quote here says, a bad system will beat a good person every time. And assuming you have the right foundation of engineers, if you fix the process, good things will happen. So let's start with an example, which I hope any of you can, who own a production environment, either experienced the same, similar, or can relate to it in some way. You have an incident, a customer complaining about something misbehaving in their environment, and they think that it might be related to you, so they're calling your support. Our support is trying to analyze and understand, and after a while of doing their research, their initial triaging, and when they see they don't have a resolution for the problem, they will page the engineering team, as they should. The engineering team wakes up because it's the middle of the night and they're in another time zone. So they wake up and they work to analyze what's going on. They find the problem. They fix it. They will resent the fact that they woke up in the middle of the night to fix it, and they go back to sleep, waking up the next day, coming to work, and just moving on to other tasks of the backlog. And if that's the end of it, you're certain to experience similar issues again for similar root causes. And this is something that is important to take into consideration. You're going to have to ask yourselves, same as I believe we did, why is it happening? What can we do to do better? What can we do to avoid seeing this specific issue, this root cause perhaps, and any other potential similar cases in the future? You have to set time to analyze after the fact. This is the only way to make sure root causes are found and the process problems are improved. Lessons are taken and are actually learned from. A sample case that we had. A code was deployed into production by mistake. That's the case as a whole. Code deployed into production by mistake. How can a code be deployed into production by mistake? Well, the case in hand, we had an engineer merging their code into the main branch, and the code failed the tests. Now, it was late, so the engineer decided that since he's the only one at the office, nobody's going to deploy the code. He's not going to deploy the code. It's okay that it's failing. He's going to go home and come back tomorrow and keep working on the issue that he had. What he didn't know was that the process, the microservice that he was working on, a different addition was made by a DevOps engineer earlier that week that automatically deployed that code to production when there was a need for an upscale. They saw that service getting to overuse of CPU, and they added an autoscale around it. And specifically that night, there was a significant usage increase, and the autoscale spinned up more Dockers with the new buggy code. And here lies the issue. We can focus a lot on why was the buggy code merged into main, or why was the autoscale added and the engineer didn't know if anything is wrong around that. But if we only focus on those, we will miss another item that we had the chance to learn from. And in this case, we did. Why, in the first place, there was a misunderstanding of what does it mean to have a main branch? And the case that we took and incorporated as a learning item for the entire engineering team, including those not completely unrelated and not involved with this incident, was how do you treat the main branch? And from that point on, the way we saw it is main branch equals production. Whether it's automatically deployed, not automatically deployed, the Docker, the microservice, which in our case always Dockerized, has autoscale, doesn't have autoscale, irrelevant. The way you approach code, the main branch from this point on is that is a drastic change. That's always production, and that learning item really impacted how our engineers look and work with the different code branches. And we never had such an incident again. Now, if you fix it with the process and don't overjudge why specific employee did something and why they were just thinking perhaps or anything like that, they were just trying to do their job. And this is important because when you're focusing on the process and taking into consideration to today, it will be one employee. Tomorrow it can happen to a completely different employee. You will focus on the process and the right root causes and improve and learn from. So how do you learn from an incident? We see 4 steps. The first one is the actual incident. You have an incident. Now, the more mature you become as an organization, the team will create incidents from supposedly minor things, which is great because they will take more and more learning, more cases to learn from. You provide the immediate resolution to the issue, depending on the issue, obviously, and then really critical, 24 to 72 hours afterwards, depending on sleep time, weekends, etc. You're going to do the debrief meeting, and we'll touch on that in the next slide. So we want to talk about do the debrief meeting, and then 2 weeks after that, 3 weeks after that, doesn't really matter the specific time frame. You did a checkpoint meeting to review the action items that came out of the debrief and make sure things were incorporated, especially the immediate tasks. Very crucial. Now, so let's talk about conducting a debrief. The core of this talk. One thing to bear in mind, a debrief is not a standard retrospect, mostly because it's usually following an incident that may usually have an impact or maybe even a severe impact on your operation, be it customers, internally, costs, anything. So it's not a standard retrospect of a sprint ending or something like that. When to debrief? Every time you think the process or the system didn't perform well enough. The more mature the organization, the more cases it can take to debrief and have an effective meeting around. Now, we ask a lot of questions. The questions I ask, the first one are always, what happened? Let's have a detailed timeline of events. From the moment it really started, to the moment somebody complained or the customer or somebody else that raised the alarm, but from the moment the issue started to roll into production. Could be when I merged the code, could be when I changed the query, when a third-party provider we're using started to crash and they updated their status page, their own status page. That's the first thing, what happened, and the timeline. And obviously, all the timeline of the analysis and the resolution. The second is the impact, the eventual impact, a very important factor to create for creating a learning environment. It helps to convey a message to the entire engineering team of understanding what's the actual impact. Cost-wise, customer affected, complaints, get a full scope as you can, and it's vital to help everyone understand why you're delving into the problem, why it's so important, and not just because they woke up at night perhaps to resolve some incident, but because understanding the bigger picture. And the more you do it, they will really care about that, and they will focus on the impact, on the bigger impact, and find and the learning will propagate to help you find other problems, potential problems sooner. Also, the more you understand the full picture and the impact of everything, it helps understand how everything is connected and related, and make sure that the follow-up questions and analysis and action items will also be full scope. Now, the first two questions you need to ask afterwards, that I'm asking is. Did we identify the issue under a certain amount of time? For us, I'm asking 5 minutes. Why 5 minutes? Well, it's not arbitrary. We want to have a specific goal and on how fast we can do things, and also the consistency of the time frames is important, and I'll touch on that again later. Also, did we identify the issue in under 5 minutes? Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. Did we fix the problem in under an hour? Did completely fixed it where there was nothing else to do? Did we do it in under 10 minutes? Did it happen automatically because of things we set in place? So there was nothing to do. The incident started but was resolved without any manual labor or anybody touching anything, which would be great. And once you have no to any of these questions, this is setting the ground to asking the questions on setting the analysis and the action items on where we can improve on. What are the learning that we can take? What are the things that we can do to make the system better around that? Now, this part, while seemingly simple, led to a really drastic cultural change over time. It set the framework in a way that helps convey to everyone the focus is on the process and the system. It's not about anyone specific. It's not about whoever caused an incident. It could be someone today, somebody else tomorrow. And it really this is setting the ground, if you're doing it correctly, to create the learning opportunities and improvement. Now, any cultural change takes time. We had a few challenges to overcome. Some of these are universal, some were probably unique to us. First of all was lack of trust. A new manager comes in trying to instill a new process and trying to change the culture along the way. This takes time, lack of trust, doubts, if there is any hidden agenda, maybe disbelief in the approach and the direction. A blame game that can happen when you're debriefing an incident. And this can be completely resolved if you're doing the meeting properly and consistently, but definitely something to have an open eye on if you see a blame game starting to happen. What often happens when you're trying to understand why a problem occurred, maybe they're saying somebody specific, it's his fault, her fault, or whatever, but this is definitely something to take under consideration and have a watchful eye on. Not following up on action items, something that can be extremely annoying. You do the process, you do the debrief, you take action items, the right action items, immediate critical items are being done in the next few days. But then a few months go by and you have another incident, a different incident. But in the analysis, you're saying the team says, okay, there are a few cases here that if we would have done those action items from that debrief, we wouldn't have had this incident. And the resolution here, it's fairly simple, but something that needs to be done. is a checkpoint. If you had a debrief, do a checkpoint after what we're doing is 2 weeks after the debrief, we're doing a checkpoint to look at all the critical items, all the critical action items, and making sure that nothing else made them disappear along the backlog and that they were actually being followed up on and executed. In addition that we're doing labeling each Jira ticket from the debrief with the label of debrief, and then we can do a monthly review of all the action items from all the debriefs over time. And then we try through those, improving the backlog, making sure maybe some of them are relevant, some of them are duplicated, and adding them to the overall effort that we're doing. Another one that is also very important is to resolve future issues. Is implementing a wide communication channel. You want to make sure everybody knows that there was a debrief. We are publishing ours internally very widely within the company, exposed to everyone with details on what happened, what's going to happen to make sure it won't happen again, helps bridge potential gaps of trust, perhaps, if there are any, shows that everything is exposed and out there, and helps also touch the last point, which is making sure the focus isn't narrow. When you're doing it on a wide channel, you're giving the opportunity to more parties look into the analysis and giving their voice into maybe something was missed, maybe there is a bigger picture that should be looked at. Okay, there are 4 things that I would want you to take from this into how to conduct a good debrief meeting. First, and already said it, but I'm going to say it again because it's really important, is avoid the blame game. If you can do it, avoid it altogether. And if you see it starting to happen around the room, you need to stop it. You need to interfere and politely and in a calm way, stop it and make sure you're getting back on track to the meeting, because setting it and having a specific vision of how it should happen and where you're going to go is important. And it's also instilling that change in the process, and eventually it will happen on its own without even being needed in the process. But definitely at the start of it, you need to be very on point on how the conversation happens around the room. Also goes right into that is to go easy on the why questions. Now, you have to ask why something happened and why someone did something, but it needs to be balanced. And this is more of an art than science, perhaps, but it needs to be balanced. How much you're diving into something, how much why questions are you asking? Because if you're doing it too much, you can create self-doubt or maybe even resentment with an employee or a group of employees, and might sound to them like you're being overcritical and will miss the whole point of trying to focus on the process. And while you were thinking this is what you're trying to do, this can lead to the state of mind that it is actually about their behavior and not about the process or the system. Be consistent in the questions, in the process. Really helps when everybody gets in the room. They know what the meeting is going to be, what are the questions that are going to be asked ahead of time, because again and again it goes at the same flow. Really helps in managing these events and creating it and making them a positive event. And keeping calm, showing there is a path forward always helps in creating a better change environment. especially when you're debriefing a very serious incident with a very high impact. Now, I took here some of our most notable learnings from all of the debriefs we had. Listed a few key ones, and I'll touch on those. On top of that, you can see down here, I have the link for our debrief template if you're interested to take a look and update it to the format that's as relevant as this is for your case. So, first item. Obviously, humans make mistakes. And this is why we need to fix the process and not trying to fix the people. As trying to fix people, eventually it won't work, and it's not the right approach. Especially if you have good employees, smart employees, engaged employees, it only highlights even more that the problem isn't there. The problem is probably somewhere around the process that we need to work on. Another that we heard a lot, and this is why it's coming up here, is the gradual rollout. Oftentimes conveyed as, I would say, some kind of a holy grail or a silver bullet of microservices, large-scale production systems. It's a great tool, but it won't resolve everything, and saying it will probably miss a lot of problems that needs to be resolved in a different process or different tools. As an example, feature flagging. Feature flagging in terms of handling errors quickly is a very important one. On things that you can do, it enables you to disable a certain feature in the system by a simple config without redeploying thousands of Dockers with the new code with or without said feature. So it really enables to do those rapid changes and rapid rollbacks. Another is breaking down changes in the pipeline when they're replacement of behaviors, splitting them up into two different cases, adding a new behavior, and once everything is working, subtracting the old behavior. If you're doing in-place changes, especially when you have loosely coupled systems, we have a very loosely coupled system around those microservices. Making an in-place change will most likely cause some kind of an error because you're doing too many changes at once. So we're splitting it up always into two changes. Another is always looking for the 10x breaking point of the system. At every debrief, when we're analyzing what happened, one of the things that we saw was we got very close to those breaking points. So setting the alerts, setting the KPIs, the metrics, and tracking when we're getting close to, okay, this is going to be 10x within a few months, and then diving into the analysis of, okay, if this specific pipeline would be 10x, how would the system behave? Can we simulate it? Can we test it? Can we try and run all the technical aspects of chaos engineering and see what happens there? Treating config as code, just like the infrastructure as code approach, which is a great one, and we're utilizing it a lot. Treating config as code goes hand in hand with feature flagging, in fact. Helps create a better process around making sure configurations also have the same level of reviews and PRs going into changes into the system and not having them separate, especially when the code only acts as the configuration tells it to act. And sometimes you have such kinds of features. So the code on its own isn't the full picture, and the configuration is what's actually going to happen. So making sure you're treating the same and in the same process and with the same respect. And I think I haven't touched on number 3. So the crisis mode process, something that we took and learned, and making sure there is a big red button of this is a crisis. and you want to wake more people quicker, perhaps. So having that understanding of what's the big red button and when to press it, and making sure it wakes up everyone, having everyone around the table when you have a big issue usually helps resolve it faster. Because it bridges all those potential lack of knowledge that you might have or anything like that. Okay, so that's it. Thank you for listening. I really hope I gave you something new and useful to use and take from this session. Feel free to ping me on any of these mediums listed here and ask questions. I'd love to discuss with you on this subject. Thanks everyone, and thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Amir. That was really great, and thanks all of you for joining this session. I hope we can all take back some of the amazing learnings that Amir just gave us. And also, there's going to be an amazing talk going right next by Soda Foundation, so make sure you join that one as well. And stick around; we are almost about to end Chaos Carnival, so stick around. There's going to be tons of more fun. Thanks for joining again. Thanks you. You've been an awesome audience.